Everybody, and welcome to this in the morning, 15 minutes to change your life. Chana 4, Yud Shvat, Bosi Ganim, the Rebbe. Very exciting journey we're going to go on. Okay, so basically, just a little bit of a preface before we start. A few ideas about this maamer and in general about Bosi Gani. So whoever doesn't know, whoever's going to see this, on the recording, it's basically before the Frierdiker passed away, he gave out a maamer to be learned on the yard site of his mother, Rivka, his grandmother, and he gave it out to be learned on Yud Shvat, and on Yud Shvat he actually passed away, but he gave out a series of maamerim. I think it was like four maamerim to be learned in subsequent occasions. There was a Chav Gimel Shvad, I think. It was like Purim. This for the Rebbe Shab's yahrzeit, and it comprised altogether it was like a hemshech, 20 chapters, and that was so it's them. So we call it Maamer Bosi Gani, but it consists of these 20 chapters. What happened was every year. So then the Rebbe, when he became Rebbe a year later on Yud Shvat by the Farayan. They made a Farayan. He became Rebbe. How did he become Rebbe? Because he said a maamer. And this maamer that we're learning is the maamer that he said. And that's like taking upon himself to become the leader of seventh generation, our generation. And so every year the Rebbe would basically analyze one of the chapters of the maamer. Let's like this year, the Chassidim around the world, we're going to be learning Yud base. I don't remember now. And so they focus on that chapter and also the Rebbe that went over it. So it's a 20-year cycle because it's 20 chapters. So in 1970, the Rebbe finished the cycle. In 71, he went back over it again. And he continued again. And that's essential, and so that's how it goes. So in this maamer, being that it's the first maamer, so therefore he's analyzing the first chapter. And so what the Rebbe will, and that's essentially the base of the maamer. And really the Rebbe, and it's just not just a very deep maamerim, but it's not just like philosophical discussions, which it is, but it's therefore the practical, to really bring out. And this is sort of the beauty of the maamer, that on one hand we talk philosophically, we're talking about these deep concepts, but we're talking about it to prove this powerful point of what we're here for. And the maamer is sort of the mission statement of our generation. And it's a very beautiful one. A few of the points that we're going to talk about. What's also very interesting in this maamer, unlike a typical maamer. Typical maamer, it's like the question, there's some stuff we'll learn, and there's an answer, and then it goes through this this process. It's one theme, one idea. Whereas in here, we're sort of learning the Frierdiker's maamer, analyzing it. So the Rebbe will take different ideas and the Rebbe will discuss it. What does that mean when the Frierdiker says this? Let's understand this. And he'll take a few central points. One of them is that we're going to learn, we're telling today, is what does it mean that the Ikke Shchina, the main Shchina is Tachtonim. So we're going to discuss what does it mean main Shchina, and then we're going to discuss what does it mean Tachtonim. And then the Frierdiker says the maamer about the Kol Shivim Chavim, and all seven are cherished. So we're going to discuss what does that mean. And we're going to go, through these different themes, and they're all tied together to the main point of that. We are the seventh generation, and this is the mission statement of our generation to bring Mashiach, and it's dependent on all of us, but it's through analyzing different aspects. So you sort of go to different places, and it's a very interesting experience, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I did. And with that, we should start. Okay, so in this book, it's page 22. You can find it in the original Chassidus made an English printing of it, or you can find it in the Hebrew version, wherever you find it. This is how the Rebbe started the maamer. Also, it's an interesting fact that when the Rebbe said the maamer, between each paragraph, he stopped and they sung a nigun. And maybe at a certain point, when after going through this a little bit, you should go find it on Chadarog, listen to the original maamer. You can hear it, you can listen to it, and you'll maybe get a sense of what's going on, even though it's in Yiddish. Okay, So now the Rebbe started the maamer. And the Rebbe read this actually from inside the pamphlet of the original maamer, or the Frierdiker Rebbe. Because the first part of this maamer, the Rebbe is quoting from the Frierdiker Rebbe's maamer. Kasav, Chakmach Admer, the Frierdiker Rebbe writes, but maamer in the maamer, Liyoim Histaklusai, to the day of his passing, Yud Shvat, Tafshin Yud, 10th of Shvat, 1950. And this is what the Frierdiker Rebbe writes, Bosi Lagani Lagnuni, Bosi Lagani Achoisi Kalo, I've come to my garden, my sister, my bride. So this is a quote from Shir Hashem. The Shir Hashem is a book of about like a love between us and Hashem. Really, it's bride and groom, but it's referencing to us and Hashem. And it says over there, I've come to Lagani, to my garden. My sister and my wife, my bride, which is two levels of love. And so the Medrash explains this in Medrash Rabbah, and the Medrash explains in its place in the Medrash, Lagan in Ksiv Kan El Lagani. So the Medrash says like this. He has to ask a question. It says, I've come to my garden. It didn't say I come to the garden, I come to my garden. What does it mean? I come to my garden. So what does the Medrash explain? Lugnuni. What does it mean to my garden? It means to my gununi, my bridal chamber. What's a bridal chamber? So it's a place where the husband and wife go. It's a very special, secluded, private area. That it's not just a public, it's not a public garden. It's not the botanical gardens, Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. It's a private, very private, secluded place that only a husband and wife go. And that's what Hashem is saying. I've come to my garden, to my bridal chamber, my sister, my bride, and talking about the love of the Jewish people with Hashem, coming in a very close, very real, very intimate way. And so where was this? This was where it was in the beginning, the original, meaning so this idea was that the main Shechina of Hashem, which we're going to discuss later what that means, the Shechina, but the Shechina of Hashem meaning essentially God's presence in this world was here. By Adam and Chava, Hashem was revealed in this world in a very real, very tangible way. The Hashem himself. And this is until here is a lashon of the Medrash. To understand what it means. The main Shechina. So we said the main Shechina was down here. What does it mean? The main Shechina, Hine Perish, the Perish Shechina. When we say Shechina, Mevar Kved Kedushas Admar Zak, and Alter explains Shenikra Shechina al Shem Shechina Laveshes. Why is it called Shechina? What is the term Shechina? Because it's Shechenes, it enclosed, and Mislabeshes, and it dwells. Shechenes, it dwells and encloses. The Shechin is something that encloses itself, meaning that I've dwelt within them. That Hashem encloses himself in this world, that he brings on this world and reveals himself in a way that it's a very real way. Shahu Rashis is Galus ain't safe. But where's it coming from? Where's this Shechina? When we say Shechina, where's it coming from? And this is sort of, like I said to you in the beginning, that we discuss deep, like in a certain sense, it's very philosophical, but it's to appreciate what's really happening. It's like Lamashal, you take a car. So someone can say, a car, yeah, it's a car. You press the accelerator and it goes, you turn the steering wheel and it turns, you press the brakes and it stops, and you turn it on. That's what a car is. But someone can come and teach you how a car runs and how it works, and how these things happen, and how the engine runs and things like that. It gives us a deeper appreciation. And this is sort of what we're doing here. But we're giving ourselves a real understanding, which will help us give a deep appreciation of what's actually the purpose of why we're here. And why this is important to learn specifically, in general, it's important because it's a maamer Chassidus. But in general, it's important to learn because this is teaching us our mission in our life, why we're here. Why us, specifically us, versus the generation of the Chassidim by the Frierdiker Rebbe and before him are very different, and what we're meant to be doing. So who raises this galus ain't safe? So the Shechina is saying, Alter Rebbe explains, it's the beginning of the revelation of God's infinite light. So as we know in Kabbalah, explains, and as we know from Chassidus, that there's different levels of how God manifests. And to get from godliness to a created existence and our physical world, which is feeling totally separated from godliness, and don't recognize, even to the extent you don't recognize godliness, it's very hard. There's a lot of steps that have to go in the process. So what we're saying is that so when we say Shechina, what does it mean? that the Ikar Shechina b'tachtenim, that the main Shechina was below. Does that mean God Himself, or a revelation of God, a manifestation of God? Is it God the way He expressed Himself in Atzilus, or is it God the way He expressed Himself in the world higher than this? And this is an important point, because we say, like, meaning there's different ways of me expressing myself. And I can come and play with my child, and I can be like half-heartedly playing, and on my phone playing, and that's sort of, you could say that's God, like in the world of Atzilus. Or I can be my full essence, playing my child and being totally sensitive to them and being there, which could be God's essence. So the question is, when we say that God's essence was down here, what level of godliness are we talking about? Because does he really care? Meaning, is he really care, or is he on his phone type of care? And that's what we're discussing. The fact that we say the beginning of the revelation of the infinite light, which is called Shechina, move on inyan Shechina hu l'mayla mi'atzilus gamkein. So what we're saying is, when we say that the main Shechina was in this world, that godliness was revealed in this world, what level of godliness? Not level of godliness, it's in Atzilus. Atzilus is a world that's totally godly, but it's a world, it's a separate being from God Himself. It's the way there's God Himself, and then there's the way it came through the whole process to start. Now, Atzilus in relation to us is the highest of high, but Atzilus in relation to godliness, to God Himself, is a lower level. So trying to understand what level of godliness is manifest in the world, and that's what the Rebbe is saying. He's saying the Ikar Shechina is way above Atzilus, and again, like the way to understand this is like within ourselves, we have different levels within us and different modes of expression, and the way we treat different people is different, and the comfortability they have with different people is different. When you're at home, you act in a certain way. And when you're at, in a formal, fancy dinner party, you act in a different way. And when we're saying godliness is coming down here, so what level of us is being revealed? Oh, sorry, what level of godliness is being revealed? So therefore, when we say Shechina, it's even before the light, it was before the Tzimtzum. So as we know that before Hashem decided to create the world, in order to get, like we said before, to get from godliness to physical world, there's a lot of steps have to go through this process. It's besides the fact you have the four worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Tir, and Siyah, which is a whole chain like the sun in itself. But even way before that, you have the Tzimtzum, which is that in the beginning, when God decided the first thoughts of deciding to create a world, it was even before even the decision to create a world. First thing you had to do was make a siluk, sort of make a place that's void, so you can sort of put into that world to bring about our physical world. So what we're saying is, when we talk about Shechina, so the Shechina is higher than Atzilus, and so the known process is you have that siluk, that removal, and then you have this empty space, and then they make this sort of, it's like called a kav, it's like a line, that the little drop of godliness gets put in, and that begins the creation of Atzilus, and then Bria, Tir, and Siyah, and our physical world. So you can imagine that when we talk about godliness, it's sort of outside of this empty place, and then what he's putting into the empty place is this little drop of an idea of godliness, and that drop of godliness creates that Atzilus, which Atzilus is the world that's totally connected to godliness, which for us and Atzilus is like we can't even imagine. And then it goes down and down and down, and more descent and less godliness and less film of godliness till you get our physical world. And what we're saying is that when we say the Shechina was down below, it wasn't the Shechina as it was in Atzilus, which is the beginning from that line that we talked about. That's from the beginning of that line. But it's talking about Atzilus even before Hashem made that empty space. That level of godliness is the one what is manifest into this physical. That's the Shechina, which is an amazing idea. Because the beginning of revelation is from the infinite light is before the Tzimtzum. Another thing interesting in this maamer, there's a few times the Rebbe will quote all the Rabbeim. And also, if you find something a little bit difficult, don't worry, because there's easier parts and there's simpler parts. But this is a beautiful thing, because if you learn it, if you understand it, you appreciate. When we say, I was talking about this, I've been talking about this a lot in the maamer that we've been learning, that Chassidus is trying to make God three-dimensional. God is not just this God, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He. What does that mean? And Chassidus talks about godliness and different levels of godliness to give you an appreciation of what that really means. And so we're saying the main Shekhinah was down here. Yes, God was down here. So let's understand this. There's a level of godliness that is the beginning, before the creation, before even the idea of creation. And Atzilus, what is Atzilus? That Atzilus is a world that is totally godliness. But what we're talking about is that the main Shekhinah is down here is not even Atzilus, it's way before Atzilus, even before the idea of creation of the world. That's where God is by himself totally. Over there is what it was, from that level is what's coming down into our physical world, that's what happens. So trying to give us a real good picture of it. And like the Mittler Rebbe says, like he writes, Ki ha'aras hakav, because the ray of that kav, of that line that we talked about, so he's saying that the ray of the kav in regards to God's essence of Atzmas Ein Sof, the essence of the infinite light, is called Shechina, which is seemingly to contradict what we were just saying. We're saying Shechina is before the Tzimtzum, and now we're saying the Shechina is way in the middle of writing that the Shechina is way below this. So the Rebbe answers, because Shechina, it's like a famous answer in Chassidus, that it all depends on where you're talking about. Because a lot of worlds and a lot of things in Kabbalah, it's all dependent on which perspective. So Shechina, from one perspective, is what the Mitzvah Rebbe writes, and from a different perspective is what the Alter Rebbe writes. Shechina is in every place according to its level. I realize it's getting late, so we're going to have to stop here, and we'll continue tomorrow. But yeah, I hope you'll continue to join me on this trip, on this journey. It'll be probably 2-3 weeks, and I'm sure you will not regret joining. Have a great day.